Everybody's looking great today.
Yes, all dressed up and everything.
You missed the refresher course, but it was pretty much like everything we got when we were going to the lectures.
Okay,
It's just, it's fresh.
well, yeah, I need a little bit of time to work in to be able to take time off of work.
Oh,
I'm still one of those working slows, you know?
I'm retired. You hit 70, you expect to have a few things different.
Exactly.
I was going to say, I have a slide.
There's also the video you can get to.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Nick.
That's it. Okay, 7 o'clock. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'd like to call this meeting to order, the BZA meeting for May 18th. And I'd ask people to silence your cell phones before we get started, just so we don't get interrupted. I'm going to start off with roll call. Let me see. Mr. Norman Thornton,
Here.
Willie Tony,
Yeah.
Bob Borka,
Present.
and James Turner. I'm here as well. Okay, we have a quorum, and I believe we're ready to go. So to start off with, I would like to move that we have an agreement to adopt the agenda. If you can, take a look at the agenda.
I make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And also, second is, if you would please, if you haven't yet, please take a minute to review the minutes from the April 20th meeting. And afterwards, I'll ask for approval of that. Ask for a motion to approve that.
I move that we approve the minutes as written.
I have an objection.
You have an objection?
It seems to be missing a part where I asked staff what was the difference between Mr. Singh's project and the other project, and she told us that the difference was Mr. Singh's problem was he caused his problem. And so that's not indicated here, but I think it's a very specific and important point. So if that were put back into the minutes, then I would approve it. So where do we stand? So I guess you need to ask.
You propose an amendment to the amendment.
Exactly. I'm proposing an amendment to the
To
minutes.
include your statements.
Exactly.
Okay,
Then I'm good.
then you're good. Okay. Then I ask for us to approve the amended minutes as was discussed.
I second.
I can't call for it.
Okay.
Have some discussion.
Okay, some
You want
discussion.
discussion?
Thank you.
At what point, Mr. Nick, will you make the adjustments to these? Just want to be sure of that.
Okay,
So why don't we just table this then until we see the amended
Minute version.
okay. That way, make sure it's in.
Yes.
Okay, that sounds good. Does anyone agree with that?
I agree with it.
I propose that we table this, the acceptance of the amendment, of these minutes until the addendum is included.
Okay.
In a second.
I second that.
Mr. Chairman, as
Yes.
a point of order, would he be withdrawing his motion to support And if he withdraws the motion to support, it's tabled.
I
Okay,
would definitely
Sure.
withdraw my motion to support in lieu of the revelation that was made by Mr. Thornton.
very good.
And I think he was, and I do remember him bringing that point to order.
Me too,
Yeah, so
me too. And as you said, there was a report.
Yeah.
Okay, so those in favor of the
table
tabling the agenda
their minutes.
minutes, thank you.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay,
All right,
all right, so we'll table to our next meeting or have a time to, to our next meeting to review at that time. Okay, so our action item we have is a request for exception for Dumfries Development Group LLC. And so do we have someone from staff to discuss this first?
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Yes.
This was covered in the previous meeting and voted on. And did the BZA, is it appropriate for the person to come back after it's been voted on? Was it requested? What's the precedence for them to come back with the same request?
So
Would you like me to answer that?
that was one of the points that I was looking forward to is what changes were made between the first request and this one.
Okay.
I think if I may speak, Chairman, I think his request is to understand how he can now present it again. And I think the answer to that question is that it's within the 30-day period.
Okay,
They can tell you whether that holds or not, but I believe that's why he's able to present it now. If he had waited 40 days or longer, then he wouldn't be able to present it.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit if that's okay.
please.
So there is no precedent for this sort of situation. The town attorney provided us guidance. She said it was she said that there's no need from town staff, or is it appropriate for us to present another presentation? We've already given our side of things from the last meeting, but Mr. Singh does have a right to come back and present the same request for the same request. If this were to not pass, he would then have to appeal it to the Prince William County Circuit Court within 30 days of this
Within 30 days.
Yeah. But beyond that, we can answer questions from you all tonight. We just wanted to give Mr. Singh some more time, kind of present his information in a way that was easier for everyone to digest in a one-time sitting period, but also just to give you all some more time to think about, what you've seen previously, but also for this package to be seen again before you all tonight. Thank you.
Question for staff?
Yes.
Has staff changed its position based on the new information, or is the
No.
staff's position the same?
The staff's position is the same. We can't change it already. We can't change it because we've already given our recommendation. So we're staying the same position. But I'd like to also say that we are open to working with Mr. Singh, even if it passes. This is something where this is more of a formality than anything. It's not anything contentious. If it passes, it passes. And if it doesn't, we're going to work with Pete to do the best thing for the project and for the community.
Thank you.
I'm asking a question.
Yes.
Are you saying that our decision is null and void by what the town will do regardless of what we said?
No, I'm saying that we are going to move forward with Pete. If it passes, then we can continue with the site plan process and he would update that to reflect the approval from tonight. But if it doesn't pass, then we will have to pursue other avenues, whether he appeal to the court or he make changes to the plans. We just are going to do our best to work with Pete and be a partner in the project.
I understand. I understand.
Any more discussion?
About the plan itself, are we now moving into speaking about the plan as we see it here? Are we at that point, Chair?
We gotta hear from Pete.
Yeah, I would
Or
say,
Pete is to present now?
yes.
Please do, sir, as far as I'm concerned.
I must start off by saying each time any person comes to the podium, it's a learning experience. And I've been here on this particular subject more than once, and each time I learn. Janae, thank you for educating me and the council, as well as our BZA board on the subject. I think you did an excellent job. And I went ahead and further researched it, how to implement what she is saying in the right manner. Nick has been a supportive person who gave me the direction what to put together from this book called The Zoning Ordinances. Okay, and we focused on those issues. And we believe that we are doing two things in presenting to you our new thought process. One is that are we improving the environment or are we degrading it? We strongly believe with the provisions set forth in the state code, we are improving it because the state code allows for certain exceptions as well as a plan to improve. We start from here when there was no exception. We got a little bit of an exception and then we improved it to here. And I think that is a good thinking on part of me, my team, and how to make it happen. And that was exactly what our colleagues here in Dumfries, who are doing a big project up the street, did. In order to accommodate their needs, they improved it. And I'm sure you will recollect that when they were talking about the settlement pond. It's a similar situation here. We are improving, and I'm sure your engineering staff will endorse that statement. Yes, with development, environment must be considered. And of course, steps be taken to improve the environment. And we believe that we are doing exactly that. And you all will say, oh yeah, Pete, you came and gave a story. That's not correct. I'm not giving a story because you have competent staff who, when they give me the site plan approval, are going to bond all what we have documented here in terms of the buffer requirements, the tree counts, etc., so that there is a mechanism to enforce it. Yes, there are certain litmus tests which the state code says. We believe that we have satisfied the litmus test. The gentleman over there pointed out, hey, is it a self-created burden? No, it's not a self-created. It is what the community wanted. It is the process which we went through where not one, but 6 different public hearings have been held on this plans where this factor that there is an encroachment was presented even to the board, the planning commission, the architecture review board, etc. So the public is well aware of and endorse in the past, this particular layout. Today, we have one member of the public. I'm sure she would love to get some time and endorse the project, but there's a conflict of interest, so let's keep her out of the talking podium. I'm sure in the presentation which you have in front of you, the applicant's response on page 3 are the most significant impacts which you should consider. And more importantly, what I want to point out is that the total square footage is 428,000 on this lot, of which some of it is in the RPA, and we are only encroaching 11,000 square feet, which proportionately is less than 0.04 or something like that. So it will not be any burden to the citizens of the town of Dumfries, should you choose to approve it. The question is often asked, is this a self-created burden? I'm going to give you a good example of why this shift is necessary. Right across from my project, where the entryway is into this project, you can see it on the plans. Our neighbor, Colonial Downs, or excuse me, they're now called Churchill Downs.
Okay.
The big horse guys
Yes.
are putting a traffic light. And they're expanding Colonial Street. As a result of that, I'm expected to move my buildings about 10 to 20 feet to adjust for the road crossings, which Nick and I have spoken about. And we will do what is right, not for the project, but is what is right for the demographics and the attraction which Dumfries should have at a traffic light. You don't want to have realigned streets. And also, I also want to point out, for the benefit of some of you, that the street grid of Dumfries is not something which Nick, I, or Janae invented. The street grid of Dumfries is there for the last 100 years plus. I happened to, in this research process, I happened to go to the courthouse to see, hey, how was Main Street created? Because I was trying to find. And in that documentation, there's a grid which was made. And guess what? It even shows Washington Street on it.
Mhm.
And it was done, what's the date? In 1790. And that's where the historic aspects of Main Street and the street grid is. And what I want to emphasize is we are maintaining that street grid, because that was the step which we were committed to with the Architecture Review Board. And they also knew or were well aware of this RPA encroachment of a maximum of about 12,000 square feet, which we have documented. I think I don't want to spend much of your time here. It's time to go home and cut the grass. So let's do that and take it to the next step.
That ends your presentation?
That was my presentation. You all are very, very well educated on what this thing is all about.
Thank you. Does anyone have any discussion or any questions for Mr. Singh or the rest of the town council that's available, rest of the town members that are available?
I have a question related to the applicant's point-by-point response. Item number 2, I'd like to hear from the town staff why this is a true statement by Mr. Singh or not a true statement by Mr. Singh. Page 3.
And the statement is?
The exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances, et cetera. And then applicant response is the exception request, blah, blah. Encroachment is based on the physical, blah, blah, blah. And it's basically asserting that it is not encroachment. And the town, as I've heard, says it is an encroachment.
Mhm.
I want to know if the town still holds that position or not. Is this statement by him valid or not? I'm on
Yes.
page 3.2, yes. If I could hear from town.
Good evening. My name is Janae Prevost White. I'm the Director of Public Works for the town of Dumfries. Reading the conditions that the applicant has in his package, to Mr. Thornton's point, the exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are self-created or self-imposed, nor does the request arise from conditions or circumstances either permitted or non-conforming that are related to adjacent parcels. The applicant's response is the exception request is based on the physical and development constraints. So the development constraints means that it's his development. So he's causing the circumstance. So it's self-created. The physical constraints, I'm not quite sure because he didn't go into detail what the physical constraints are. It could be that it could be the size of the lot. It could be the fact that Route 1 has an easement that runs along the eastern border of your property that they are taking for him to do the widening. So that leaves less development for him to put his design on. It leaves less land for him to put his design on. Excuse me. But again, the lot can be configured any way he wants to. So, and just to be specific, what's encroaching is a pool. So
Is what?
a pool,
Swimming.
a swimming pool.
Swimming pool.
It's not parking. It's not the building itself. It's not HVAC or electrical system. It's a pool. And
And the significance of that is.
it is staff opinions. It's staff opinion, right? It's just my opinion that the pool doesn't have to be on that side of the stream. I don't know that anything in the proffers requires Mr. Singh to have a pool on the development. Parking, yes, right? Certain types of housing, yes. Drive aisle widths, landscaping, all of this sort, yes. But a pool is not required. And I'm not saying a pool is not a benefit. He has the right to design it so that he provides a benefit for people to want to come in and rent the apartments. Just move it out the RPA. That's staff's position, that it should be. And even if this was the building or the HVAC or parking, we would still be requesting Mr. Singh to move it out of the RPA. So this really comes down to, it's an environmental impact, and we're asking him to not have an environmental impact in this particular area, right? That's just really all this comes down to. It doesn't take away from the development across the street. It doesn't affect Main Street any kind of way. I would also just like to briefly point out that this building right here sits within the RPA. We are less than 100 feet away from this stream. So imagine another building within less than 200 feet directly across from us. The fact that it will block out some of the light will have impact on the water quality of that stream. Now, Mr. Singh is saying that should he be granted the exception, he will do a water quality impact assessment to mitigate that impact. And I've read through it and it's very detailed. I haven't gone through line by line to see whether it meets DEQ's requirements, but we'll get there. It's not important right now. All that's important right now is your decision to allow him to put the encroachment in or move the encroachment out.
One other question. If we were to approve this and you then find that whatever he's proposing to mitigate the circumstance would not be sufficient to meet the water quality standard, what would be your next move?
I personally would not
No, I
give
mean
my,
the town, not you personally.
well, me as the Director of Public Works
Yeah.
would not give my approval to land use because Mr. Singh has not met the requirements of the water quality impact that he would list. There's also a very detailed guide called Riparian Buffer Mitigation Manual. And that manual goes into detail for when you do an RPA encroachment. It's not specific to Mr. Singh, it's for anybody. If you own a house, all the way from owning a house, all the way up to the casino, right? If their impacts, they have to do mitigation just like Mr. Singh does. So they have to go into detail. If you take a tree out, you have to put a tree back, right? If you take a 6 caliper tree out, you can't put in a seedling. There's a certain size of tree you have to put back. You have to put back trees, you have to put back shrubs, and you also have to put back understory. You can't have heavy machinery in the RPA, right? All that stuff has to be planted by hand. There's also a lot of issues because the state takes this buffer very seriously and obviously enough to create a whole program around it. So that this is strictly focused on your decision whether the encroachment goes in or the encroachment goes out. If the encroachment goes in, well, to Nick's point, we work with Mr. Singh, work on his RPA, his WQIA, his water quality impact assessment statement, his mitigation, and we keep moving forward. If he doesn't decide to do that, he has 2 options. Either he can change the plan or he can appeal to Prince William County Circuit Court. So.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Singh.
Joanne explained the situation very well. All I can add to it is that both Nick as well as Joanne's organizations groups here at the town of Dumfries have the final site plan approval. And it is their responsibility at the right time to make sure that the RPA, the DEQ's standards for encroachment into RPA are satisfied. And in addition, the town of Dumfries has a code which allows for what they call, what's the right term for that? I'll come back to it in a minute. He confused me. Looking at at his phone. Hey, we are supposed to keep the phones turned off. Okay. Anyway, the exception will be bonded, and the proffers would be bonded. The bonds will only be released upon approval by the town management. That's, as a citizen, that's the tool which I have offered, and the code allows me to offer that. You know, as far as encroachment is concerned, yes, and every effort is being made in the design, in the construction, as well as monitoring by the town of Dumfries during the construction process, that all steps are taken so that there is no further degradation to the quality of water here in the town of Dumfries. Thank you.
Thank you. I move that we make a vote on this issue.
Excuse me.
Oh, yes.
If I may, can I make comments?
Yes, I was to say, any other discussion?
I do, and I appreciate the time to do so.
Mhm.
Is it possible to put up Exhibit 1 map on the screen? Yeah, if you can grab that. Exhibit 1 is a map that says First Town Center, and it says Exhibit 1 in the top right. That's a nice, really big picture of it, sir.
Okay.
If it's okay with my cohorts, what I would like to point out, do you have the map, gentlemen?
Yeah,
I think we all
right
do.
here. That's the map we're talking about.
Yes, sir, that's the map.
Do you know what page it is by chance?
It's page 5.
5.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and there was discussion about this being about a pool, but this shaded area in the middle is the encroachment area.
Represented on the
Yes.
one is the encroachment.
Okay,
And the other part is the part which we have now satisfied.
okay, so the dark area that was, according to this map, it was in the encroached area, but it's now going to be trees and things like that. Is that correct?
It's going to be porous paper
Okay,
because when you have the hard surface, it must be porous.
Okay.
okay,
Okay? So that,
okay.
and more,
Right.
so there's no revenue.
What about the part that's inside the building,
This area.
Yep,
is
that area.
pool and
but below where the pool is? That infrastructure right there appears to be a building inside the BZ.
building comes like this.
That's correct. That's inside also the same area. Is that correct?
One has to do and come up with a buffer plan,
Okay.
mitigation plan. It must be considered.
All right. So, and forgive me, the text is pretty small, but it talks about building footprint and sidewalk, 5,400 some odd square feet.
Yes.
And then emergency drive aisle, 5,200, which is that bottom portion you're speaking of.
Yes.
None of this actually talks about a pool.
That is, in this is that part of the.
It's all part of the building structure. Okay. So I just wanted to be on the same page that we're not just talking about a swimming pool. We're talking about the actual building being in the encroached area. Okay. I wasn't aware of that till I actually looked at this map and I was like, I want clarification on that. I thank you. That's all the clarification I need on that. I do believe that the design it appears to be self-created. However, I also feel that there's a lot of credence to an exceptional stormwater management system, a state-of-the-art system, if that's used.
Mhm.
Currently, everything just comes right off the road. And I've watched this area for years and
Yeah.
y'all have been probably here longer than I and just seen whatever going into that
Oh, yeah.
stream. So the plan that's being proposed, while it does encroach, I think that there's something else offered to be considered that will help. If it was just left the way it is right now,
Mhm.
I think it's hurting that zone.
Right.
So there's
think-
two different perspectives.
I think we have somebody speaking to this point.
Yes, ma'am.
A water quality system. It's not stormwater. His engineer has proposed that the site doesn't require stormwater, which is still under review. But the system that they're putting in treats the water and releases it. It's not about detention, which is what you're talking about, capturing all the street water, slowing it down to existing or pre-existing conditions to have less impact on the stream. That's not what his design proposes. It's water quality, not quantity. I agree with you 100% that it should have some stormwater quantity system proposed there. His engineer has stated on the plans, it's right on. In the water quality impact assessment on a map that looks like this.
Okay.
Can you see that? His engineer is stating that because the impact of the site is only 1% of the entire drainage shed, no stormwater is required.
So for clarification, on page 2, RPA mitigation measure water quality improvement initiative talks about the proposed FTC's project stormwater management system is a state-of-the-art SWM filtration system. Is that an incorrect statement then?
Filtration, right? It takes stormwater and it treats it for sediment. So the state requires that they offset nutrients, phosphorus, total suspended solids, and nitrogen. Nitrogen is like fertilizer you put on your grass. And suspended solids are like, sediment, brake dust, all of the kind of stuff. So they want when you're over 2,500 square feet in the Chesapeake Bay area, which is what the entire town is, you have to provide water quality on site. And so that's what this system is. It takes stormwater and it treats it. It's not taking stormwater and detaining it.
Thank you for the clarification.
Can I comment on that? That is. As Janae has mentioned, the two aspects of any site design. One is to improve the quality of water which goes into the stream. And we are doing that with a stormwater management system, which does not exist today. The street water today, as you all just pointed it out, just gushes it into the creek, which DEQ is supposed to monitor and keep it clean, and also the town staff. Why is that happening today? And here's a local citizen who's saying, hey, help me improve that. So take those kind of things into consideration. So in future, I can assure you that the quality of water which is going across my property and from Main Street is going to improve, which I'm sure the staff will fully endorse because that is what is shown on the plans which they're reviewing. Staff also pointed out a constraint about 1% rule, which luckily over the last 6 months, I also learned that, and Janae gave me a good lecture on it and showed me what it's all about, okay? In our particular site, in Dumfries, that 1% rule shall apply. I'm going to give you a reason why it applies. Is, let's just say, for example, I'm just going to go back to my particular site. If you don't apply that rule and we have a detention system which is in the clay and sand soils which we have here in Dumfries, it's going to collapse. Not only it's going to collapse, even if somebody puts and say a filtration system, it's going to create a siphon. Because the level of Quantico Creek is at such a location. The elevations of Quantico Creek drives all the development which are going to happen, not because of what I'm proposing, but for every citizen in the town which owns any land on either side of Main Street, all the way to the Pizza Hut because all that is into the same creek. So yes, I am working with my engineers as well as town staff to see what is the best way for this particular situation or anybody else in town to handle it. And like any other jurisdiction in Virginia, 1% rule for certain situations can be studied and implemented. Thank you.
I have nothing further, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any more discussion or any other questions from the board?
No, not for me.
If I may,
Yes, sir.
it is, maybe it was kind of self-serving, but and I did read the assessment on the water too, when the firm that he had looked at it indicated quite clearly that what would be put in there would definitely increase the quality of the water,
Mhm.
Once was in place.
Right.
And it would be a positive thing. That's why I took that whole thing. I'm hearing the differentiation between quality and quantity. Because I was here when that creek, that quantity, that 100-year flood came through.
It wasn't that long ago. It was
Right.
flooded over top there.
Exactly. I don't know if what he's proposing would be able to handle that, in the sense that would mitigate, the erosion of the property or what, however, but that just stands out to me when you start talking about quality, which is which it is clear that once that is their stormwater management system is in, it will improve the quality, but the quantity, will it be able to handle it, what could be put in place that would address that?
I just want to speak to that a little bit. So the quantity, that's a great question. I'm glad it was brought up tonight. That's something that we as a staff would handle as throughout the administrative process. What Pete just has to present is our requests and the water quality assessment. So that's the main thing that you all should be considering tonight. While the quantity, that's all great. These are all great questions to ask about, like that consideration. But trust me, the Public Works Department and the Planning Department will work with Pete over the next few months to make sure that the quantity is handled. And we're going to take everything into consideration that we've heard from you all tonight. This is why we have these types of boards and commissions to hear these ideas. So that's all I wanted to say in regards to that.
Okay, so then most of these documents, including the comments made by Ms. Janae, indicates that what he proposed would improve the quality of the water.
That's
Yeah.
one.
Okay. All right.
Last time, any more discussion? That was great. I mean, I like all these questions. And Mr. Singh, as you had said, every time I come to these boards or whatever, I learn a lot myself. So that was a very good point. Any more discussion? That's it? No?
No more discussion for me.
Okay. Okay, so the vote tonight is, let me see, the request for exception for Mr. Singh and the building of this area that he's proposing. How do you vote?
All right, let's move, then we take a vote and
Okay,
somebody going to second. We take a vote.
Is it, you're making a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion.
I'll second the motion to take a vote.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Okay.
So at this time, I'd like to take a vote for the proposal. And it's it's for the exception that Mr. Singh is requesting. Mr. Thornton,
I vote no, and I'll give my reasons for voting no. one, we as a BZA are not supposed to allow the encroachment to take place if there's an alternative. The encroachment that is proposed to take place is to allow an amenity, one that is not necessary for anyone. The other things that have been proposed, like filtering the water, plants, et cetera, are not related to that pool. He could do any of those things without having that pool. So that's where I stand, a no vote on those ideas.
Okay. Mr. Turner.
Well, I supported him the first time. I also support this move because again, we're looking at the vision that the town has put forth. And he did comment that this is in congruence with the comprehensive plan. And if this town is to move forward, I just think that, and this body does have the authority to grant those kinds of, and I think that power is invested in us for it to be used at the time when it's necessary. And personally, I see this as a time when this would be beneficial. I was on the planning commission 10, 15 years ago when he first brought this up, you know? So I've seen him meticulously go through this process, trying to get this thing moved. One thing after the other, slowing him up, but he's sticking to it. So I support Pete and Mr. Singh on this project. I understand the ramifications of that encroachment, which I think is minuscule, and I do think that other properties that he proposed compensate for that. But I just think that we need to be proactive and let this project move forward.
Okay, good. Mr. Burkett.
Approve.
You approve? Okay. I know last time I disapproved, but after having a chance to look this over and to think about this, especially the impact that it would have on the town, the discussion about the water improvement and all of that, I vote approve. So we have 1 nay and 3 yay. So
Motion passed.
motion passes. Okay.
Is there any other business?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Okay.
Support the motion to adjourn.
All right.
All right, good luck.
Take a vote.
Yeah.
No, all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Good.